Greetings everyone, my name is Apple, and today I'm going to review a book as well as showing you guys a classic, I should say. This book is called Animal Farm, written by George Orwell. Looking from the front of the cover, I know it's not really that interesting because first of all, this isn't really a good looking pig, and usually you don't imagine pigs in suits. However, I do encourage you to read this book if you're already after 10 years of age, because this is really a metaphor for what is happening in the real life, and it's definitely helpful for you out there when you're trying to understand the political and the way that the world actually works in a critical, philosophical, and political way. This book has three main characters. The first one is Old Major. That is the oldest pig and mostly the one who begins the story of today. The second main most important character is this guy, the guy in the cover, the pig in the cover more likely. This is Napoleon. He's also a pig. Old Major is also a pig. And the third character, though isn't shown as much as Napoleon or Major, it is still an important character because it is basically one of the characters that make the event actually go forward and make the story actually interesting. That is Snowball. So who is Old Major? Who are those characters? Old Major, in the first chapter that we open up, Old Major is the one who have started the entire story, and here's how it happens. It was in one night when the farmer, the owner of the farm, named Mr. Johns, goes to bed. There, Old Major, who just won a competition in the town about, I'm sure that you already go to a town fair, right? So basically, Old Major won a prize about being the most heavy pig there. I'm sorry. And then that night, he suddenly thought of an idea that could possibly save the entire farm. He talks about how men cannot do anything. Men cannot plow, they cannot lay eggs, they're not strong enough to run fast, they're not strong enough to plant anything. Yet man is the ruler, the king of all animals. Why is that? So Old Major starts imagining an entire ecosystem where animals are in charge of what they want to do and what they want to be. And that is what he said. They continue on with his speech, and then after the meeting, he have a song about his system. It's a bit like a national anthem, but more like it's a song about the animals, for the animals, and to the animals. That's basically what it is about. In the next chapter, we found out that Old Major have died. Well, he was already 16 years old, and that is really long for a pig. That's when our next two major character comes up. His name is Napoleon and Snowball. This is where people start thinking about what actually happens. When a ruler died, when a very admired ruler died, there's usually two or more candidates who step up in wanting to take his place as the admired ruler, the admired king. So this is what happens. Snowball and Napoleon both want to be the ruler, but in the end, Napoleon decided to let Snowball be the ruler. At first, people thought that it was Napoleon trying to be nice and thinking that Snowball is actually more suitable as the ruler than him. But later, in the book, we found out that it's one of his schemes again, which I will explain further later. After a few more chapters, there is a rebellion. Animals start writing their own amendment, their own constitution about their own freedoms. Of course, it is in English, but they don't share with the men. what happens is basically all the animal in this farm, its original name is the manor, chase Mr. John and Mrs. John outside. And most people would think at this point they would take over the house. However, the animals think it's contaminated, and therefore they shut it down. They don't want anyone to come in. Sounds familiar? Of course, the medieval ages in Europe, everyone thought the other countries are contaminated and therefore shut it down. Next in the story, Napoleon started to introduce some doubts in the animal's mind. Like, for example, why did the milk suddenly disappear? Has Snowball trying to get everything to himself? That planted doubt in every animal's mind. That makes them think, oh, is the ruler actually who he is? Is he actually as admirable as Old Major? Why is this happening? Because first of all, Snowball is not as experienced as Old Major. Why? Because Old Major is the one who thought of this idea. You could say that, oh, well, I mean, that speech was this or that. But Snowball didn't actually thought of the idea originally. He just follows about what he thought Old Major said. After a while, they think that all this unfairness, all this doubt should be settled. That's why they've written over the amendment again. By this time, there's 7 main amendments, which here I will read to you. The first amendment is, whoever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. The second amendment is, whatever goes upon 2 legs or has wing is a friend. The third amendment is, no animal shall wear clothes. The fourth one, no animal shall sleep in a bed. The fifth one, no animal shall drink alcohol. The sixth one, no animal shall kill other animals. And finally, the seventh one, all animals are equal. That is the 7th amendment that they all settled down. I'm going to skip some of these in order to allow you to enjoy the book while you're reading it. Now on to the later part. Please skip this if you want to actually enjoy this reading experience. I have to warn you, there's major spoilers ahead. Now, if you're still brave enough to continue, let's continue. In the end, there was a horse who committed his entire life to follow Snowball's secondary advisor. After Snowball had been outcasted because of his doubts in his mind, because of those doubts that Napoleon planted inside the animal's mind about Snowball, he was outcasted. Later, there was a horse who tried everything in his power in order to offer Napoleon the greatest service that he could do. Because of that, the horse's health declined immensely. At the end, he died. He was injured first heavily, and then they all informed Napoleon. Napoleon called a van. Don't ask me how he telephoned the van. I do not know. The book didn't actually say it in detail. However, we can imagine that basically pigs right now have already evolved into some kind of human-like leader animal. So that's where it happens. The van shows up, they took Boxer away, and at first animals are happy. They thought that Boxer was going to another place, another paradise, but then Benjamin, that horse closest friend, started telling all the animals, look, the van is what the van is actually saying. On the van there's a print saying Animal Slaughter Company. The actual company's name is rather long, and I would not want to say it here because of spoilers again. However, we can say that it is technically the end of the road for Boxer, the horse. Because of that, animals also start to doubt Napoleon. But then again, Napoleon has power. He is different from Snowball. Snowball is kind of like a laid-back leader who trusts his animals to trust him. However, Napoleon has his own protection system. He have grown dogs into protecting him and him only. He have grown an entire organization of pigs who only serve him and him only. That is why Napoleon is much more powerful than Snowball. Does that sound familiar to you? The government actually have their own security system, and it's not just for the people there. It's also for the government itself, for the government security. And that is why there's still corrupted government systems nowadays in our world. All in all, in the end, pigs turn to animals. They change the name back into the manor farm. They introduce Mr. Johns back into the farm, and the pigs become human themselves. There is no difference from the pig. I quote from this book at the last chapter, the last page of the last chapter in this book. The animals look helplessly in from the window, from pig to man, from man to pig, then back pig to man. There was no difference between the two. Nobody could ever tell. That is what happened in the story. What happens is that at first they thought this entire paradise where animals could rule themselves, could protect their own species. But in the end, what actually happens? A corrupted soul. We cannot actually say Napoleon is corrupted because, yes, he does have his own way, he does have his own principles, that he wants his species to benefit best. But in our perspective, as citizens, as the animals of this farm, we see Napoleon as a bad leader. In the end, the people who we trust that is corrupted betrayed us in the first place. And they're not going to do something like, oh, I'm sorry, I betrayed you the other day, but now you're under my system. It's not going to be like that. If the animals hadn't found out, Napoleon would have never told them. Maybe after his death, he would never have told the animals. Does that make you think about our nowadays worlds? Think again about who is trustworthy and who is not. That is my message. Thank you for listening.